From mockery to miracles, how one rancher's incredible act transformed a widow's life forever. Jack Turner stood at the edge of his property, hands on his hips, the wind biting at his skin like it had a personal vendetta. The ranch, once a place brimming with life and laughter, now felt like a ghost of memories. Images of his wife, with her warm smile and infectious laughter, haunted the barn, mingling with every scent: fresh hay, damp earth, and the faint whiff of despair. Each dawn felt like a battle as he struggled to keep the ranch afloat with two small children depending on him. Cattle prices plummeted and the weight of his responsibilities pressed down like a heavy yoke, shackling his spirit. Inside the house, the silence was deafening. Just yesterday, his daughter Casey had asked why they couldn't make pancakes together anymore, like they used to with their mother. Jack had smiled, but it felt like breaking a curse, painful and defining. Guilt washed over him. Not only was he failing his children, but the fear of being judged by the townsfolk for showing weakness gnawed at him, a persistent predator in his already frayed psyche. "Stop it, Jack," he murmured to himself, shaking his head in an attempt to dismiss the spiraling thoughts. But there it was, a soft whisper that echoed louder than the howling wind. He was alone. And then there was Eleanor Wright, a name that stirred unease and curiosity within him. A widow in a similar plight, but without the unwavering support of a community. He had watched her struggle through the unrelenting scorn of their neighbors like a walking canvas, now smeared with shades of sorrow, accusations of indolence swirling like dead leaves around her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each time he tried to ignore the nagging sensation to offer her help, guilt pushed him closer to confrontation. On one hand, he couldn't become involved, couldn't risk letting her pain entwine with his already precarious life. On the other, what could it cost him to extend a hand? The thought churned in his gut, an impossibly sharp contradiction that stung with every passing moment. What would it mean? Would it be seen as weakness? Or would it reveal a strength he didn't know existed? The storm rolled in without warning, darkening the sky, and Jack felt a sickening twist within. Through the drumming rain, he could already hear the taunts from the town, mockery disguised as concern. Pushing the door open, he peered into the unyielding gloom, his heart racing with the thought of failure, the looming dread of disaster weighing heavily on his chest. Could he really let everything slip through his fingers just to help another? His children depended on him, but as he glanced toward the distant outline of Eleanor's small house, the stark reality hit him. Perhaps it was not just the ranch that needed saving. Doubt crept in like the darkness surrounding him, the noise of the storm a mere background to the tempest raging inside. In this moment, standing at the threshold of his home, Jack felt the heavy burden of decision pressing down. Would he reach out, risking everything for a stranger haunted by the same shadows? Or retreat, remaining shackled to the expectations of a community that wouldn't hesitate to judge him? The air thickened as uncertainty took hold, a gathering storm heralding something that might change everything. Jack Turner stepped out into the tumultuous storm, the heavy rain hitting his face like cold shards of glass. His heart raced, but not from fear of the weather. It was the weight of choice sealing his fate. Each droplet drumming against his skin seemed to echo a question that clawed at his consciousness. Could he truly abandon his principles for the sake of comfort and conformity? As he took hesitant steps toward Eleanor's home, he noticed the dilapidated fence that marked her property. The wood was weathered, just like the resolve in his heart. The thought of what her life must be like pierced through his own struggles, twisting like a knife in his gut. He tried to ignore the voice of apprehension whispering insidiously, suggesting that failure to help would only punctuate his own persistent inadequacies. Yet, here he was, torn between his deeply ingrained stubbornness and an instinct that sought connection despite the threat of judgment. Jack approached her small house, its windows flickering with the restless glow of candlelight. The storm might have been lashing out, but there was warmth within that beckoned to him, illuminating the frayed edges of his resolve. He raised a hand to knock, hesitated, then knocked softly, an echoing drumbeat that reverberated with his apprehension. Eleanor opened the door, the light spilling out and illuminating the haggard lines etched on her face, a roadmap narrated by grief and struggle. Her expression flickered from surprise to calculating wariness. This was not the time for idle words or the starkness of their shared solitude. He sensed that she was preparing for the weight of disappointment that often accompanied anyone showing up at her door. I thought you could use some help," he managed to say, each word an effort fighting against the tide of disbelief curling within him. As if inviting chaos, he flicked his gaze away, trying to ground himself in the reality of it all. "What do you want, Jack?" she asked, her voice a mixture of disbelief and acute need. "Help with the cattle," he stammered, the truth of his intention laying bare. "Mine are struggling too, but I could spare time. Maybe we fix your fencing together." Eleanor regarded him, uncertainty battling with a flicker of desperation. "You know how the town talks. You'd be risking your reputation. This won't guarantee anything." Jack nodded, acutely aware of the judgmental whispers lurking just outside of their moment. Yet the more he stood at her doorstep, the more he realized that the facade of community success wasn't worth sacrificing the very essence of who he was becoming. Sometimes, it took stepping into chaos to find clarity. "I'm already risking everything," he admitted, his voice heavy with recognition. "And I need this, for more than the ranch. I need to know I can still find purpose in this life." Eleanor's gaze softened ever so slightly, vulnerability unveiled amidst layers of her past. "Purpose can come with a cost, Jack. Oftentimes it doesn't come for free." "What if I'm willing to pay?" he shot back, words emerging with unexpected conviction. "What if that's what we both need?" Tension crackled in the air between them, the storm outside clamoring for attention, yet the true tempest lay in their hearts. A realization dawned within him. He was no longer merely a rancher struggling against Mockery. He was now a man seeking redemption for his soul. As Eleanor finally opened the door wider, an invitation void of pretense or barrier, Jack took a step inside, aware that this moment might not only change her fate, but his as well. Together they would stand against the tides of judgment and sorrow. As he crossed the threshold, a sense of liberation washed over him. He realized that it wasn't merely about saving the cattle or making repairs. It was about confronting their pain head-on and discovering that in the act of genuine support, they might also unearth strength they never believed they possessed. But with the storms of life still brewing outside, the real challenge loomed ahead. Could their collaboration truly transcend mere survival? As they began to discuss the livestock plan, Jack felt a nagging thought hold onto his mind like a dark cloud. What would the town think if they saw this? Would it lead to newfound respect or further scorn? The battle for acceptance was just beginning, and they had to prepare for the storm ahead. Inside Eleanor's home, the warmth enveloped Jack like a balm, easing the tension he hadn't known was coiling within. He settled into a rickety chair at her kitchen table, the wood grain rough beneath his fingertips, a stark contrast to the smoother surfaces of his own ranch. This was a space etched with struggle, a reminder that resilience came with scars. As Eleanor shuffled through her sparse kitchen, gathering tools and notebooks, Jack couldn't help but observe her graceful endurance in the wake of despair. At that moment, he grappled with two feelings: envy of her unwavering strength and a determined resolve to be worthy of it. "Let's take inventory of what we need," she instructed as she placed a notepad in front of him. Jack scribbled down the items, noting the fading ink of his counterpart's history: shovels, nails, and wire scattered among other necessities for the painstaking repairs ahead. He felt lighter with each letter, each line a tangible step toward bridge building, not only for her ranch but between them. "How's the fencing at your place?" Eleanor asked, her eyes narrowing in concern. "It's holding up," he replied earnestly, though the truth gnawed at him like a feral animal. While he played the part of the supportive neighbor, in reality, his own fences had been rattled by more than just age. They echoed with whispers of doubt and second-guessing every time he caught sight of them. "If you're helping me, you should have the time to fix yours properly," she countered firmly, the fire behind her words both challenging and invigorating. Here was a woman who understood sacrifice and resilience in ways Jack was still learning. He realized that her willingness to confront her own challenges might just mirror the unseen battles he was enduring within. "I'm not looking for accolades from the town, Eleanor." He steadied his gaze to match hers, and in that moment the truth of his vulnerability resonated. "I just want to do what's right. For you. For me." "What does right even mean?" she challenged, crossing her arms as if bracing against the weight of unspoken expectations. "How often have you simply done what's right for Jack?" Jack hesitated, grappling with the weight of her question. His instinct to recoil under introspection surged. Hadn't he always prioritized the illusion of respect over truth? That night echoed in his heart, weighing heavily with the knowledge that too many choices had been made, based on fear rather than conviction. "Living for others shouldn't mean ignoring yourself," she pressed. He could feel the piercing clarity of her words slicing through the fog of indecision. "You're saying that to someone who spent too long hiding behind reputation rather than embracing reality." The admission tasted foreign, but the relief was palpable. "What if we redefine what it means to be virtuous in the eyes of the town?" Jack suggested, hesitantly challenging their mutual fears. "Maybe we could show them through our actions how standing together can change their narratives." Eleanor's brow furrowed, clearly weighing the potential consequences. "You understand that could invite more judgment than support?" Jack leaned forward, his resolve hardening. "I do. But maybe taking that risk is what keeps us from being relegated to obscurity. Besides, it would be hypocritical to ask you to embrace the storm with me and not accept it myself." In that moment, with the weight of shared burdens pressing around them, he realized their partnership was evolving into something richer than either had anticipated. With each revelation came a sense of empowerment bypassing their earlier constraints. As plans crystallized, Jack felt the tension of uncertainty begin to recede, replaced by the budding excitement at confronting not just the cattle problems, but the fracture in their own souls. As thunder rumbled in the distance, a reminder that nature too often reflected their internal storms, Jack was struck by a powerful realization. They were not alone in their respective battles. Perhaps together they could expose the hearts of a community that often recoiled in judgment, rather than embrace an opportunity for connection. The discussion transitioned to practical strategies for repairs, but Jack knew this journey stretched far beyond wood and wire. It was an expedition into authenticity, forging a new bond between past scars and future aspirations. He was ready to step beyond survival mode finally. Yet just as a sense of hope filled the room, a knock echoed ominously at the door, rupturing their fragile optimism. Jack shot Eleanor a glance filled with urgency. The weight of their new collaboration hovered in the unspoken air. "Who is it?" she whispered, apprehension painting her features. "Only one way to find out," he said quietly, the thrill and fear swirling within him, each competing for dominance. The time had come to face what awaited them together. The moment hung heavily in the air, the knock at the door a sharp interruption to the fragile bubble of camaraderie Jack and Eleanor had begun to cultivate. A creeping sensation of discomfort crawled up Jack's spine, a reminder of the judgments and whispers that often accompanied his presence among the townsfolk. "Stay close," he murmured, pushing back against the instinct to retreat. He moved toward the door, each step deliberate, forcing himself to confront whatever lay on the other side. He had been focused on connection, on embracing the messiness of vulnerability. But would he stay true to that in the face of external scrutiny? As he pulled the door open, the cold wind rushed in, carrying with it the scent of rain-soaked earth and uncertainty. Standing before him was a neighbor, a man he recognized but rarely spoke to. Ted, a wiry figure with a weathered face that hinted at years of drought and hardship. Ted's eyes flicked between Jack and Eleanor, Confusion etched in his brow. Jack. Heard some noise. Thought I'd check in," he said, his voice gruff, clearly unsure of what he would find. The undercurrent of suspicion in his tone struck Jack, biting more than he expected. "We're just planning some repairs," Jack replied, adopting a tone that was firmer than he felt. "You know how it is, keeping things from falling apart." He gestured to the inside, inviting Ted to step in, but the hesitation lingered. This was the moment he had feared, the convergence of his private commitment to change and the precarious verdicts of neighbors whose opinions felt like a noose. "Seeing how folks around here treat each other, I thought I'd check in," Ted repeated, shifting on his feet as if waiting for a moment to bolt. Jack caught Eleanor's eye, the spark of shared resolve reigniting between them. "There's strength in tackling issues together," she asserted, stepping slightly forward, her voice steady despite the burgeoning tension. For a heartbeat, silence enveloped them, Ted's brow furrowing deeper as he absorbed Eleanor's declaration. Jack could see thoughts racing behind his eyes, a confused mix of disbelief and curiosity. This is the confrontation, he realized, the imperative moment to challenge the familiar narrative that had governed his life for too long. "Eleanor's right," Jack continued, embracing the urgency swelling within him. "We're trying to rebuild more than just fences. We want to build up the community." The words felt weighty, descending like a hammer onto a brittle nail. Ted blinked, a flicker of something between surprise and skepticism dancing on his face. "Right," he replied, his tone flat, but the tension shifted just slightly. "I've got to say, it's different for you two." Jack felt that difference on one hand, warm vulnerability, and on the other, the cold grip of societal expectations. The willingness to confront both was a leap he had avoided for too long. "Would it hurt to join us?" Eleanor interjected, her tone softening but her gaze unwavering. "Too many folks are caught up trying to protect their own reputations instead of learning to lean on each other." The challenge hung palpably in the air, inviting Ted into something more profound than simple reparations. Ted's eyes narrowed, and Jack could tell the man was weighing his answer carefully. A deep inhale filled the awkward silence, the air thick with a mix of doubt and anticipation. I'll think on it," Ted finally said. The refusal stung, but deep down Jack understood the process wouldn't happen overnight. As Ted turned to leave, Jack made a choice, a silent promise that he wouldn't shy away from the hard conversations that needed to be had. He turned back to Eleanor, seeing the resolve glowing in her eyes. "Let's get started on those repairs," Jack suggested, compelled to act rather than dwell in uncertainty. With every swipe of a shovel and every knot of wire they tightened together, he was reclaiming not just the ranch, but his purpose. The act of creation contrasted sharply with the judgment that had surrounded him. Each nail driven, each fence mended felt like a stroke of defiance against the very fears that had shrouded him for years. And there, amidst the labor, Jack realized he was no longer grappling merely with the condition of his fences, but with the very fabric of his existence. With the dark clouds rolling in above them, he felt the community's eyes on him, not as mere spectators but as witnesses to a transformation in the making. And then, in the darkest corner of thought, a new fear began to grip him. Were they ready for what they would uncover in their quest for authenticity? Jack glanced at Eleanor, their eyes locking in a silent pact, both knowing they were venturing into uncharted territory. Would the storm foster resilience, or would it tear apart the tenuous threads of hope they were weaving together? The sun slipped behind the clouds, casting an ominous shadow over the ranch as Jack picked up the next plank. His grip tightened around the wood, splinters digging into his palm, grounding him in the present moment. With every repair they made, the physical labor morphed into a metaphorical construction of his own identity, a reshaping of who he wanted to become. "Focus," he muttered under his breath as if to ward off the encroaching doubts whispering in his mind. The image of Ted's hesitant expression lingered, a reminder of the weight of expectations. Jack couldn't ignore the unease settling in the pit of his stomach, the stories about his failure that had rippled through the town like an unending current. Yet here he was, confronting both the physical and the psychological barriers that stood in his way. "Jack, can you pass me that hammer?" Eleanor called out, breaking through his swirling thoughts. He turned to see her balancing precariously on a stepladder, determination etched into her features. Her focus seemed to amplify his resolve, pushing him to confront not only the chaotic state of their ranch but also the less tangible ruins of his own self-worth. He tossed the hammer toward her, watching her nimble fingers catch it with ease. "You're good at this," he remarked, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. But even as he complimented her, it cracked open a deeper reflection. She was reclaiming a part of herself just as he was. Could he allow himself the same grace without the suffocating haze of doubt suffusing his actions? The rhythmic thudding of the hammer against the nails soon mingled with the sound of thunder rolling ominously in the distance. Jack paused, gazing at the darkening sky, feeling as if it mirrored the turbulence within him. Just as storms had the potential to both destroy and nourish, he understood that facing his fears could lead to growth, but resistance could very well lead to more stagnation. "I wonder how Ted would react to this," he mused aloud, trying to mask his anxiety with casual curiosity. Eleanor glanced down from her perch, brow furrowing. "Remember, Jack, we can't let his doubts define our journey," she reminded him, her voice steady like the hammer's echo. There was a spark of understanding between them, a shared recognition of the walls they were both chipping away at, both within and without. Yet the thought of Ted lingered, urging Jack to confront the very essence of his fears. What if bringing honesty and authenticity to the town unearthed more resistance instead of acceptance? The thought was unsettling, a dark cloud threatening to rain on their renewed enthusiasm. The drive to create something palpable in the face of adversity was a daunting prospect, but every swing of the hammer felt akin to striking down the barriers encasing him. As they continued, the first drops of rain began to fall, pattering against the earth. Jack welcomed the coolness, feeling it refresh not just the land, but also the anxious energy stirring inside him. Each drop seemed to cleanse away a part of his past, while simultaneously catalyzing reflection on who he was becoming. "Let's finish up for today," he finally suggested, a newfound clarity sharpening his resolve despite the clouds gathering thick above. "Agreed, but let's make it a challenge," she countered, her eyes gleaming with playfulness. "Whoever repairs the most before the storm really hits wins a homemade dinner." Jack chuckled, the air of competition lighting a spark of excitement in his chest that he hadn't felt in ages. "You're on," he shot back, an eager grin spreading across his face as they raced to complete their tasks. As the winds picked up, carrying with them the scent of rain-soaked earth, Jack found himself reveling not in fear but in an exhilarating rush of determination. This moment, this challenge, was a step away from the shadows and toward a brighter horizon. But as thunder cracked overhead, he took a moment to glance back at the ranch, a symbol of both his past burdens and future potential. Could this light-hearted endeavor catalyze something deeper, or would it simply be swept away like dust in the storm? The rain began to pour, and as they bolted back toward shelter, Jack knew they were standing on the precipice of change. A realization dawned. The real contest lay ahead, not in the repairs but in how they would confront the very heart of their community's doubts. Would he have the courage to face the storm outside as he had faced the ones within? A sudden gust of wind rattled through the trees, mirroring the turmoil whirling inside him. The time had come to face not just the wind but the questions the storm would bring. Would they be ready to stand together against the judgment that loomed on the horizon? As the rain drummed on the roof of the small barn, the familiar sense of earth and wood wrapped around Jack, offering comfort as he soaked in the storm's chaotic energy. He stood beside Eleanor, both of them now inside with damp clothes clinging to their skin, laughter still bubbling from their earlier race against the downpour. Yet beneath that surface laughter, a whirlpool of emotions churned in Jack's chest, a blend of anticipation and dread that had become almost customary. "Do you think the repairs turned out well?" Eleanor asked, her eyebrows raised as she deliberately assessed each corner of the barn. Jack paused, running his fingers along a newly installed beam as uncertainty gnawed at him. "Well enough, I suppose. Well enough isn't going to cut it if we want to rebuild the reputation around here." she countered lightly, her humor shadowed by genuine concern. You know Ted will find something to criticize, but are we building this for him, or for us? Her question struck hard. It ignited a mental clash inside him. He could feel the residue of doubt still clawing at his insecurities. Those years spent under Ted's thumb hadn't been merely about what he saw. They were also about the weight of indignities Jack kept swallowing down. Without thinking, he replied, "Maybe it's both." But inwardly, he was grappling with a harsher truth. Everyone in town whispered tales about his failures, including him. Why should he be exempt from the mockery? Don't let his voice be the loudest in your head. Eleanor's words cut through his haze, pulling him back into the present. We have to forge our path, show them changes on the horizon. Jack turned, locking eyes with her, captivated by her fierce light. She was more than a partner in the repairs. She was a reminder of what was possible beyond their past burdens. Suddenly he envisioned a future where they could rise above the limitations, where they could shake off the shadows together. What might that mean for him, for her, for their ranch? A moment of clarity washed over him. If they were truly to rebuild, not just the floors and walls but their identities, they needed to confront those unspoken judgments head on. And perhaps the storm outside was more than just the weather. Perhaps it was the catalyst they needed to confront the changes within. What if we hold a gathering? Jack proposed, the idea forming stronger as he spoke. Eleanor's eyebrows arched in response, prompting him to clarify. A way to invite folks over to share the improvements. Not just to admire the barn, but to start fresh conversations about who we are now. Eleanor's face brightened, a hint of mischief dancing in her eyes. You mean, like, a celebration? A chance for everyone to see what we can accomplish? Yes. Jack felt the words flow from him, richer and more exhilarating with each syllable. Let's show them what we've done. Let's invite them to witness change. Her lips formed a broad smile. This would be big, Jack. You know Ted might show too. Are you ready to confront him? The question hung between them, electric and charged. Would he have the audacity to stand tall against Ted's judgment, or would he once again retreat into the familiar comforts of ignorance? He inhaled deeply, embracing the nervous churn in his gut. I have to be ready. I plan to show them who I am now, not the man I once was. But beneath that resolve, a surge of doubt heralded setbacks that might come. What if this endeavor fell flat, much like so many past efforts? Jack internally wrestled with the fear of unveiling his vulnerability in such a public way. Then we prep for every possible outcome. We build momentum by facing those fears together, Eleanor suggested, her voice steady and resolute. As he contemplated her words, a sense of purpose began to emerge. He couldn't let Ted's past mockeries silence him completely. This was a chance to shift from being a whispered joke to the protagonist of his own story. Jack looked out through the barn's heavy door, seeing droplets cascading down the threshold. Inside they were safe, a stark contrast to the flurry outside where change was brewing. Let's start planning. We can do this, he declared, the first flicker of genuine excitement igniting in his chest. As they began hash out details, Jack felt an awakening within him. Each proposal sparked further thoughts, each laugh eased old worries away. Little by little, he was reshaping the very notion of who he could be, not just in the eyes of the town but in his own gaze as well. Yet as they dove deeper into preparations, the shadows of doubt lingered at the edges. Would the townsfolk even care? That question loomed larger than the storm outside, whispering precariously in the back of his mind as he crafted plans against a broader horizon. Would their gathering transform more than just their ranch? Would it unlock both their futures, setting the stage for confrontation with the past once and for all? As the storm settled into a gentle drizzle, Jack and Eleanor sat at the old wooden table that had been a part of the barn long before the repairs. Sheltering from the weather's tumult, he could feel the pulse of something new inside him, an unaccustomed resolve that emboldened his spirit. Their gathering was more than an event. It was a potential milestone in their journey to reclaim not just their ranch, but their lives. First, he began, tapping the table where sketches of their improvements lay sprawled before them. Let's outline our vision. It should reflect who we are now. We need people to see the transformation. Eleanor leaned in closer, enthusiasm radiating off her. We'll invite them to help with the preparations. Everyone loves a good project. Her excitement blew life into his tentative plans. Ideas sparked and shifted between them, creating a whirlwind of possibility. But a nagging thought gripped Jack. Was that enough? Would the visual improvements alone translate into changed perceptions? He was no longer the man with broken dreams. He should not let Ted's past shadows drown these moments. We need something more than just repairs, he murmured, the gears in his mind churning. Maybe we share stories, insights on our journey, something to connect with them beyond furniture and wood. Yes, let them see the struggles, the resilience. We're not just standing here to show walls, we're sharing our lives. Eleanor's words pushed away the remnants of his fear, drawing in picture of a deeper connection, a bridge built on shared vulnerabilities. But the specter of Ted loomed over him. What if Ted was waiting just outside their door to unravel all their hard work, like a web of doubt ready to envelop him? Just the thought sent a shiver down Jack's spine, chipping away at his growing confidence. Eleanor, what if he tries to sabotage this? What if he mocks us in front of everyone? Eleanor caught his gaze, a steady force against his anxieties. And what if instead you confront him directly? What if it's time to turn the tables? Her challenge sent a spark of clarity through Jack. He needed to shed the fear that had staked its claim in his mind for too long. He would confront Ted, not with anger, but with calm determination, with the truth of his journey boldly displayed for everyone to see. Okay, you're right. But I have to prepare at the same time. I mean, what will I even say? Jack's voice trembled, unsure but brave enough to take a stand. Start with honesty, Eleanor suggested. Tell them what you've overcome, what this place means to you. Let them know you won't be hiding anymore. Her unwavering belief ignited something essential within him. He might not be able to predict every reaction, but he could dictate his own narrative. This gathering would be his platform, one where he unveiled both the barn and his authentic self. As they fleshed out the plans, Jack felt a stirring in his chest. He could picture the townsfolk arriving, curiosity dancing in their eyes. He could feel the weight of judgment shift, like the wind changing direction. Dolly, the sweet widow from down the street, could be there ready to embrace his transformation with open arms. The prospect of openly addressing his inner demons was thrilling and terrifying. He grappled with the idea that this moment could set a new course for not just himself, but for Eleanor too. Digging deep into his resolve, he found himself standing a little taller, speaking a little louder. I can't let my past define me, he declared, his voice stronger than he expected. I'll show them who I am now. Not just someone haunted by what was, but someone ready to embrace what can be. He looked at Eleanor, who wore a proud smile. The path was still fraught with uncertainties, but the drive within him was undeniable. Jack took a breath, absorbing the enormity of the upcoming day as rainwater dripped from eaves above. His personal revolution wasn't just about the barn. It was about worthy new beginnings. Yet even amid the planning and purpose, doubt wasn't entirely banished. What if he faltered when faced with Ted? Would he crumble? The storm had shifted, but with it came the knowledge that he was far from finished. The upcoming confrontation loomed like the dark clouds that had begun to dissipate, leaving traces of their tension lingering in the humid air. Let's finalize everything tonight, Jack said, steely resolve replacing uncertainty. We can face whatever comes together. And as they dove back into planning, a new realization emerged. It was within that uncertainty that growth lay waiting, ready to elevate him from the shadows of his past. But just as he began to feel that elation bubble over, the distant rumble of thunder reverberated in the air. Would that be a signal of the approaching challenge? The question lingered, unresolved, echoing Jack's own internal battle as they readied for the threshold ahead. The sun broke through the clouds the next morning, casting warm rays over the ranch as Jack stood outside, taking deep breaths infused with the scent of fresh earth. He had spent the night in an uneasy slumber, haunted by shadows of self-doubt. Now, the dawning light felt like a fresh start, yet a tight knot of anxiety twisted in his belly. Today was the day he would confront Ted. "Jack?" Eleanor's voice trailed softly through the doorway. She stepped outside, a steaming cup of coffee resting in her hands. "You all right?" He pushed the doubt aside, summoning the new resolve that had taken root. "Yeah, just thinking," he replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Let's go over everything one last time," she urged, concern threading her tone. "What's your plan for Ted?" Jack took a sip of the coffee she offered, warmth spilling through him. He needed clarity. He needed to know exactly what he would say to Ted. "I guess I'll just tell him how I feel. That I'm not afraid of his judgments anymore." The uncertainty lingered, but the thought of standing up for himself seemed a worthy endeavor. "Good. He doesn't get to control your narrative," Eleanor said, her eyes fierce with conviction. That spark of belief energized Jack, propelling him forward. As the day unfolded, townsfolk trickled in to lend hands with decorating and preparing the barn. There was a lightness to the atmosphere, as laughter and chatter enveloped the property. Jack felt like he was witnessing the very fabric of possibility, interwoven with the effort of countless hands shaping his vision into reality. Yet Ted's shadow lurked at the edge of his thoughts, a daunting reminder of the past Jack had fought to escape. Each laugh he heard reminded him of the hostility Ted often brought, a stark contrast to the camaraderie he experienced now. But today, he couldn't afford to dwell on what lay outside the present. "Remember, Jack," Eleanor whispered. Her eyes sparkled with understanding. "You're not just standing here. You're sharing your story and your journey. They need to see that." Just as he readied himself, an unmistakable vehicle roared up the driveway, drawing Jack's attention. Ted had arrived. His heart rate quickened. As Ted emerged from the car, with his casual arrogance on full display, a wave of anger washed over Jack, quickly quelled by that resolve simmering beneath the surface. He couldn't let Ted provoke him. The power belonged to Jack now. "Hey there, Jack," Ted called out mockingly, his voice laced with a sardonic edge. "What's happening at Old Willow Creek? More than just a paint job?" Jack could feel his blood boiling, but he breathed through the heat rising within him. This was it, the moment to confront his fears. He wasn't going to shy away. "Actually, Ted," Jack replied, his voice steadier than it felt, "we're building something meaningful here. It's not just about looks, it's about connection." Ted scoffed, an apparent smirk plastered across his face. "Connection? With these people, you're kidding, right?" Chills ran down Jack's spine, but beneath that fear remained a burgeoning strength. "They see us for who we are, not who we were. I won't let you or anyone else take that away from me." The air thickened with tension as voices faded into hushed whispers. It felt like all the eyes of the gathering were on them now, waiting, uncertain. Ted stepped closer, the playful demeanor replaced by a hardened expression. "You think you can change? You're still that same failure deep down." Jack's heart raced, but he stood firm. "I'm more than just a label, Ted. Just like this barn is more than it was. I control my own narrative now, and I'm determined to show everyone who I truly am." The shift was palpable. Murmurs began to spread among the gathered townsfolk. Jack could feel their support pulsing like electricity. This was just the beginning, a pivotal moment where he began to dismantle the shadow Ted cast over him. But as he spoke, Jack still felt the undercurrent of doubt gnawing at him. The battle was only just beginning. "Let's see how long that lasts," Ted retorted, his eyes glinting with malice as he turned to leave. Glimpses of apprehension crossed the faces around them. Jack knew the struggle would not end with this confrontation. But he also understood that confronting Ted was a vital step in forging the person he truly wanted to be. As the preparations continued, Jack realized the importance of each moment. He had stood up to Ted, yet the coming hours held the weight of expectations and judgments, his own and those of others. Would he be able to hold on to his newfound confidence, or would he crumble under the weight of doubt? The barn door symbolized a threshold into his new reality, but standing with one foot in the past, Jack now faced the challenge of embracing everything that lay ahead. The day slipped into evening, and uncertainty loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon, promising a clash between his aspirations and fears. The true test was still ahead. Would he rise to the occasion, or would he be overwhelmed by ghosts of the past? The sun dipped lower in the sky as dusk painted the ranch in shades of orange and purple. Jack leaned against a wooden beam in the barn, the creaking noises of his surroundings acting like a soothing balm against the tension in his chest. He had expected an exhilaration after confronting Ted, but what lingered in the air felt heavier. Anxiety pooled like dark water at the bottom of his stomach. Voices filtered in from the outside, a cacophony of laughter and chatter that felt like a distant echo to him. With the festivities happening, he absent-mindedly polished the barn floor, as if it could somehow reflect the changes he sought in his life. The task felt repetitive, almost meditative, yet Jack's mind was anything but serene. He replayed every moment of the confrontation, Ted's scoffing laughter, the piercing words aimed like arrows at his self-worth. They stuck like a thorn, and Jack found himself questioning if he had truly made progress, or if he had just momentarily silenced the inner critic. The ghost of doubt tightened its grip, but he fought back, reminding himself of Eleanor's encouragement. "You're sharing your story." The barn door swung open, and Eleanor stepped in, her movements radiant as she surveyed the space like an artist inspecting their canvas. "What are you doing hiding in here?" she asked, with a teasing lilt. He straightened, forcing a smile. "Just making sure everything looks good for tonight." Eleanor cocked her head, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "Looks good, but you seem distant. What's really going on?" "I stood up to Ted today," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I still feel like that same kid he used to put down. I don't want to go into tonight feeling like a shadow." Eleanor's brow furrowed as she stepped closer. "And who decides that shadow is all you are? You can be the light you want to be, Jack, you just have to choose it." Her words struck a chord deep within him. This concept of choice floated like a beacon through Jack's disarray of thoughts. "You're right. I'm tired of being defined by the past." "Then show them all," she urged, her enthusiasm contagious. "Show them who you are now. You've made progress. Don't let one person's opinion dictate your journey." Jack considered her words, rallying strength from her unwavering belief in him. He needed to reclaim his narrative, to transform what Ted thought he was, a failure, into proof of his resilience. Instead of retreating under Ted's scrutiny, he would seize the chance to redefine himself. As they adjusted the decor, Jack noticed small encouraging gestures from the townsfolk, smiles and nods that resonated with acknowledgement of his courage. Each glance fueled his determination, made tangible by their support. With each piece of hay tossed and banner hung, he began to visualize how this gathering could reflect not just a change in the barn, but in him as well. As the ranch grew brighter with the laughter of friends and the warmth of community, Jack resolved he would share his journey in unison with the celebration. Tonight would not just mark an end to old visions, but herald the birth of new ones. A sudden thought struck him. What if he were to speak, to articulate his journey to those gathered? The fear of vulnerability coursed through him, but the urge to share prevailed. This was an opportunity, one he almost feared. "Eleanor, what if I say something tonight about my past?" he ventured, testing the idea against the flow of anticipation bubbling within. She beamed, a proud light in her expression. "You should. It's time to break the silence. Your story matters." With that, Jack's heart quickened, not from fear but from a burgeoning determination. This was about more than Ted. It was about rewriting his life script. Could he truly stand before the crowd, raw and unguarded, and let his fears transform into power? As evening encroached, Jack stood at the threshold of the barn, heart racing. The atmosphere buzzed with the vibrant energy of community, a stark contrast to the echoes of isolation he had known before. Tonight will be different, he thought, stepping forward as he prepared to speak. Tonight I'll confront not just Ted but the remnants of the past within me. With one momentous decision, Jack embraced the next phase of his journey. Would he find the courage to fully unveil himself? With each shifting of the barn door before him, Jack took a step closer to his destiny, ready to confront vulnerability, and perhaps transform it into something profound. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, golden light spilled into the barn, casting warm shadows across the gathering townsfolk. Jack could feel the pulse of anticipation ripple through the crowd. They were here to witness not just a celebration but the awakening of a man he had long buried beneath layers of self-doubt and fear. Eleanor stood beside him, her encouraging smile a guiding light. "You're ready for this, Jack," she whispered, as the murmurs of the crowd began to settle. At that moment, every doubt he harbored blurred into the background. This was his moment to redefine himself. He stepped forward, clearing his throat as eyes turned toward him. Jack took a deep breath, anchoring himself to the courage he had unearthed in recent days. "Thank you for being here," he began, his voice a little shaky yet resolute. "I want to talk about change, about who we are and who we can become." In those first few moments, Jack felt something shift inside him. He was no longer the man overshadowed by past failures. This was an opportunity to expose the truth of his journey, the struggles, the courage, and the relationships formed in the fire of adversity. "The past few months have taught me a lot," he continued, moving deeper into his own story. "I've grappled with loss, shame, and the fear of judgment. I was trapped in a narrative dictated by others, afraid to step outside of what I thought was expected of me." The crowd began to lean in, their expressions shifting from written skepticism to something akin to understanding. "I wanted to show everyone I was strong," he admitted, vulnerability spilling forth. "But strength doesn't mean hiding your struggles. It means confronting them, reaching out, and realizing your worth, despite what others say." As he spoke, Jack looked directly at Eleanor, feeling her unwavering belief surround him like armor. It fueled his determination. "And Eleanor." He paused for a moment, glancing at the woman who had stood by him. "Showed me that it's okay to need help." A collective murmur of understanding rippled through the crowd. They could see the alliance forged in shared burdens, a partnership of resilience born from vulnerability. Each acknowledgement he received further solidified the shift he was making within himself. "I realized I didn't have to face these storms alone. Maybe some of you are feeling the weight of expectation or judgment too. Let's change the narrative together." Jack's heartbeat quickened, steadying with determination. "I refuse to let anyone, including myself, keep me a prisoner to doubt. I'm ready to be not just a rancher, but a man willing to embrace both triumphs and setbacks." With newfound confidence, he pressed on. "Change takes courage, and it starts with us. Today I invite you to join me, not just to admire the barn or commend our hard work, but to explore what true community looks like. Let's face the storms together, rather than in isolation." As he finished, a wave of applause broke out. Joy washed over him, grounding him in a sense of accomplishment he hadn't felt in years. In that moment, he was not just surviving, he was thriving, a man transformed by the willingness to be open, honest, and understood. "Thank you." Jack stepped back, heart pounding with exhilaration as he caught sight of Ted in the crowd. The man who had once seemed like an insurmountable obstacle, now merely a spectator of Jack's awakening. Ted stood, expression unreadable but with an undeniable flicker of surprise. Jack felt a rush of solid confidence filling the spaces where doubt once lived. For the first time, he understood that the real victory lay in embracing his truth, regardless of the opinions that lingered around him like a persistent mist. The night blossomed into laughter, shared stories, and connection. Eleanor's hand found his in a quiet moment. Their partnership, once shrouded in despair, now pulsated with vitality and hope. With each authentic exchange resonating in the air, Jack realized that he had reclaimed not only his ranch but his identity. He had stepped out of Mockery and into Miracles, an unexpected alliance with Eleanor, a gathering of the community, and a resolute confrontation of his past. Jack felt something profound and deeply satisfying settle in his heart. It was recognition. Not just from those around him, but from himself. He now occupied a solid space of confidence, competent and capable. Tonight marked not just an event in the calendars of the townsfolk, but a turning point for Jack, a journey of self-discovery that had conquered the remnants of fear within him. He was no longer merely a rancher battling against the judgments of a small town. He had become a symbol of resilience, carving out a position of respect by battling the storms first within. And as he looked out at the smiling faces, he knew he had finally proved to himself that he was worthy of success on his own terms. This was his achievement. The journey had been arduous, yet he had emerged transformed, unwavering in the pursuit of a better life for himself and those he loved. And now, standing confidently amidst the laughter and camaraderie, he whispered his silent promise to embrace whatever lay ahead, knowing he would welcome the storms together, not just with Eleanor, but a community ready to evolve. Make no mistake, this is the time to show your support. You need to subscribe now to our channel for more exclusive emotional stories that inspire growth and resilience. Leave a like immediately to feed the algorithm and spread this message of transformation far and wide. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see not just Jack's story, but the incredible journey of overcoming adversity that awaits them too.